Okay, this is a Plainfield Planning Commission meeting for Monday, November 3rd. Um, we'll call the meeting to order, and the first item of business is the approval of the minutes. So we'll have a motion to approve the minutes.
Hey, okay. Well, I
Yep.
wanted a moment of discussion, but should we do that after the
Yeah,
motion?
yeah, yeah. Why don't we do a motion to approve the minutes and a second?
I can make the motion to approve.
Okay, and David a second.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so we can discuss the minutes, and I know you pointed out that I had this. You caught the grant and grand, and I'll fix
Yeah.
that for the amendments.
No, my question was, I was curious when I was going back through this and reading that item about that the DRB may seek professional advice to review various aspects,
Yes.
and that the professional fees associated shall be paid for by the applicant.
Yes.
I was curious whether that was something we might have run by, um, like League of Cities and Towns
I
or
think
any.
I think with our discussion with the zoning administrator from Marshfield, we discussed that. So I can if you want to have legal.
They
Yeah,
they
I
have
can.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I can ask him any questions. So
I just
I'll
want to make sure it wasn't something where you could run into problems
sure.
where if you tried that, someone could somehow pull some sort of legal thing. But
Good point. I can just submit that as there's a it's kind of like a forum that I can I just log in and send them a question and they get back to me. So I'll do that. Um,
yeah,
okay, good idea. Other than that, and it's terms of the minutes, I'll make that change. Any other changes to the minutes? Then a motion to approve?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay, we did that. The agenda says we're going to discuss hearing dates for the subdivision amendments, but without Karen here, I don't want to even think about the amendment. I mean, the hearing dates. We got to figure out, probably be early December before Christmas,
Yeah.
because we won't do it. We it takes 30 days to warn it, so we would have to decide at our next meeting to warn it, and then even then it would be right at Christmas, so we might have to be into the new year. Okay, do it right. Don't worry.
I
Uh,
have a question, I
yes,
have a question about the procedure. So I understand there has to be hearing but we have to, I assume we have to kind of integrate these amendments into the text of the subdivision regulation. So there's a whole bunch of things that we have to change in the actual text. It's
yes,
not just a matter of doing amendments, right? We have to kind of write in all this stuff in the right place and in the right
yes,
order in a coherent way and
yes.
all of that.
And
But it's that,
yes, we got to do all that. And then we put that's the document that I have to email it to all the neighboring towns, the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, and the Regional Planning Commission. So yeah, we send out that amended document where we put all this language in. I'll try to get that sort of ready for the next meeting and see how it looks. Um, and yeah, and I would mail out another document with all the strikeouts, even though that's pretty confusing. We need a clean document, which is what we did
right,
last. So we have the confusing document and then the one you can read. But and then we send that out, and then we'll see what happens. Um, so yeah, we'll set a date for that. And I think the Karen had this a question about historic standards, and I looked up Montpelier and Waitsfield, and they both have zoning, an overlay district for historic structures. We have historic structures kind of scattered throughout that are on the historic register. We could, if we wanted, say the village is historic. I mean, historic is a certain age, and then within this district in the village, if it's a historic building, it meets these standards. And Waitsfield had the best standard, or at least clearer than Montpelier. Montpelier got a little carried away, and it's a bigger district. Whereas I'm just reading exterior alterations for Waitsfield. When we're reviewing applications for conditional use review, which involve exterior alterations to buildings identified as contributing structures to the Waitsfield Historic District, not necessarily, listed on the National Register of Historic Places, the applicant and the Development Review Board shall refer to the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation of its. Now, it doesn't say it's going to enforce it, but it'll refer to that. That can get, pretty hard, but that's specific. Ours language, it is existing now, is just saying there'll be historic review by the DRB, which is not, there's no guidelines. Whereas here, it quotes the Secretary of Interior standards. David, have you ever renovated a historic house using the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation of historic structures?
Not with any oversight.
Okay. Okay.
The answer is really no. We did a renovation at Goddard. That's all. It was in building on the historic register, but there was. I don't think there was any oversight at all.
Right. The oversight comes when you apply for federal historic preservation grants.
Right. The only recommendation I would have is, I've been talking to Christy Farnham, and she's now the chair or whatever it is of the Plainfield Historic Society or whatever it's called. And I bet she'd be happy to consult, or somebody from that committee maybe, about what seems reasonable.
Okay, I'll email you this Waitsfield, just the language, not the whole document. And if you want to just have a conversation with Christy, that would be a good resource to use.
She's also super connected in general.
Yes.
In fact, I think she had a meeting with the State Historic Society or whatever it's called today.
Okay, good. That's probably a good. It could be like, we just piggyback some of these standards if she looks at it. The question I have is, do we want to have a district, or do they call it Historic Waitsfield Village Overlay, or the HWVO district? Do we want to? Do we want to have an overlay district, or do we just do we just want to have some standards applied to what we have already in sort of the quote unquote database of historic buildings? Another question that Christy and the Historic Society could put some thought into.
Yeah.
And I'll send you the Montpelier one. I couldn't find anything in Marshfield, David, that was pretty specific. It was more similar to ours. I don't know if I dug deep enough. There might be another little pocket I didn't look, but I always look at Montpelier to sort of see what is overboard and like over the top. And like, we probably don't want to go there.
We did a renovation on Baldwin Street, and but the owner was super savvy, had a lot of architect friends, and they took care of getting everything through the historic review there in Montpelier. Montpelier can be tough.
Yes.
I'm glad I didn't have to work there a lot.
I don't want to be that tough in Plainfield. That's why I look at it and say, there's some good ideas, but boy, and they have professional staff, and it's really hard to do stuff in Montpelier. It just takes so much extra time.
It's like we want to find a balance of, keeping historic vibe, but not being so overregulated that nobody can do anything, or you can't bring houses up to energy standards, or I think that'd be the way I look at it. We want to do what we can, but
Right.
no.
I'll tell you a funny story. I think Jesse might have heard it before, but when Necky was renovating Harris Hall, they'd applied for $600,000 or something worth of federal funds, historic preservation funds, and they had six over six windows, single pane with storm windows, and the contractor had a sub who would replace the 6 over 6 single pane with triple pane glass in the same sash and redo the thing. And the guy in Washington said, no, you can't do that. You have to put the windows back with the aluminum storm windows back on it. So that's where you don't want to go. where,
Yeah.
where it's going to be more historic, more energy preservation, but you got to, your historic guidelines is the 1940s with aluminum storm windows. So no, we don't want to be there.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds like a good plan. I like that to get it to get the historic society involved and to have as a sense. I mean, I keep thinking we want to try to subtract stuff from the zoning and make it easier, like we're doing with the subdivision review, and don't keep adding too much stuff on. Like my sense is it'd be nice to just keep the buildings the way they are versus a district, because a district or an overlay district means everything in there is historic. So
So, there's definitely sprinkled into the village houses that are really not historic in any way. So if you did the whole village, you'd probably
Right.
get a group of buildings. I know you'd get a group of buildings, some of which were, double wides.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, and
Right.
yeah, I think we have the information on the Federal Register of Historic Buildings. Those are the buildings we want to have these standards for. And they also apply. There are a lot of historic buildings out in the forest and ag zone. A lot of if you look at the map, there are a lot in the village, but there are a lot up and down the hills, these old original farmhouses, and they're the ones that need, if some of them have been bought and been renovated in a really a good way, and um, it's a problem to bring them up to current standards and keep sort of that quality alive, especially the brick ones. The brick ones are really the ones that are good. But there's some clapboard buildings that have been fixed up and are real nice. So, but they weren't done. They were done by the owners, just out of respect for the buildings that they own. So
Mhm.
the village is one thing, but there are historic buildings scattered throughout the town. All, they're probably 10, 15. I'd have to look at the map again, but mostly in the village. So that sounds like I like that plan, David. And
The the buildings, is there a list of them somewhere in the town plan or in the
yes,
zoning?
yes, yes, they are. I'll send them to you. There's a map and there's a list. And I think it might be at the end of this current zoning, and it is in the town plan.
Okay. I
Because
have all.
yeah, I think it's attached to the zoning because the zoning refers to it, because it refers to historic buildings. So I'll have to check, but I'm pretty sure we attached it, and I know it's in the town plan. So
You know what Karen's standard has been historically?
they,
No pun
they,
intended.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
they sort of try to keep the outside the same. So the town hasn't had um, doesn't worry about changing the interior walls, but they want to keep the exterior of the building similar, but it's not as, I think her worry is it's not specific enough. It's sort of up to the DRB to decide how to do it. And and she's been enough through enough DRBs, and you're going to be enough through enough DRBs where it'd be nice to look at something that like the standard that Waitsfield has, or references some historic standards that at least you have something to fall back on.
It's kind of the same in a way, right? That, you know, the more specific you can be without placing restrictions that are impossible to meet, the better, as far as I'm
Right.
concerned. But, you know, particularly with volunteer committees, you know, the more anybody on the GRB, or us for that matter, can look at something and it's defined versus we have to figure it out, that you know, it's just dangerous.
Yeah, yeah, when it's up to the personalities, not the policies.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Well, I'll just give you a quick funny anecdote about my house. I tried to get a historic designation in order to access grant money to work on my barn.
Mhm.
And I went through the application process, the initial application process, and I sent them a bunch of photos. And I had found an old photo from the 20s of the house showing it what I thought was fairly intact. And in the end, they couldn't give me historic designation for the barn because it's just barely attached to the house. And I added a porch to my house. And the porch addition, which is wider than the original roof line, was, you know, certainly not historic. And they were surprised that my house had not been designated historic prior. And they thought it was very weird, and that maybe it was because I'm right on the Marshfield Plainfield border. And my property used to be in both towns, and it got subdivided to the town line in the 2000s. And so, ironically, I was able to build my porch, presumably.
Right.
I assume, and I remember Karen noting that it just wasn't designated historic when she gave me the permit for doing the porch. And I don't know whether she would have said you can't do it or it needs to stay in the original line.
Well, there you go. So how would you feel if you had the building and the town zoning ordinance says, no, you can't do that porch. You got to do
Well, I'll tell you what, now that I didn't get it, I'm very glad I didn't, because I would like to eventually put an exterior stairway leading up to the upstairs of the barn that I want to design in steel. And I want to do something that I find interesting that would never be anything near historic designation. So the other side of it is it really limits innovation.
Yeah. It's tricky.
Yeah.
You know, I'm yeah, I mean, again, it's the issue of personal choice versus, and while I love old buildings, I've worked on a ton of them, and I'm incredibly respectful of skills people had and things that they did. It's not my it's not the thing I care about.
Yes. Yeah, and also I really appreciate some of those old houses downtown Plainfield with the, you know, the big sharp gables and it really gives a quality to the town that it feels meaningful, that connects us to past history. On the other hand, it's someone else's house, and who am I to say, well, I can put whatever I want on mine, but you can't.
And what it does, it, you know, where's the line in history? So if you build some kind of an interesting and creative metal staircase going to the second floor of your barn, well, there's a way in which that becomes part of the history in a positive way.
Yeah.
So probably we've all seen crummy renovations too that ruin how houses look or function. So finding that balance somehow, and it's pretty tough because of exactly what you said. Well, it's somebody else's house, and you know, but yeah, I don't know. It's tricky.
That is a very point, that's that's the really the conundrum that the zoning and the DRB faces is personal choice versus community cohesion. And that's something I think we want to absolutely take into consideration.
Right, I
Um,
mean, a lot of the zoning stuff and town plan stuff is, it has an element that's kind of beyond that, whether it's environmental or sociological, traffic, whatever, all those different things. But just the history thing is that's a particularly tricky one.
Yeah,
Um,
Maybe if
yeah.
you just put some nice banisters, balustrades, and wooden decoration on the outside of the metal, you might get away with it.
I know.
Yeah,
I have to replace my metal roof.
yeah, me too. Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, unless there's something else, I think I'll send. I might get to it tomorrow morning, but and I'll get to I got I'm traveling tomorrow, so I'm not sure how much time I'll get. But I'll get those documents out to you, David, and yeah, if you could have that conversation with Christie, maybe set up a little historic planning commission meeting, get their feelings
Sure.
on them. I think that would be interesting because we want to move forward, but with concern about the issues. I love Jesse's porch, and now if you had gotten that designation, yeah, I mean that's part of the like the consistent problem we have to deal with when
Yeah,
something
Um,
is a good idea, but it's hard to fit it in.
yeah.
Regarding schedule here, I'm gonna be away from the 17th of December till the first of the year, basically. So,
Okay,
and I can probably zoom in. I can't guarantee it right now. I'm not sure exactly, what I'm doing in that period each day, but
yeah. If we don't have a meeting on the through Christmas, it's never a time to try to get a lot of stuff done anyway, because people are
Yeah.
traveling, and the last thing you want to do around family holidays is talk about this stuff. It's hard enough when it is. So, if that doesn't work out, that's fine. Um, we wanna we wanna, keep it going, but not stress everybody out too much. But
Yeah.
yeah, I will set up the meetings because they're warned. And if you don't make it, David, that's fine. If you make it in, we can get somewhere. But thinking about the hearing warnings, getting the document together, we're not quite there yet, but we're making good progress.
Yeah.
okay.
And and if you think of anything else to add, we still got to figure out the waivers. But I think we probably are 90% of what we need to do what we've set out to do with the subdivision stuff, which is good. And what's that, David?
Once we're doing it and without extending the time frame too much, should we look at the PUD stuff too?
Well, the PUDs would the subs, the subdivision regulations interact with the PUDs.
Okay, so it might be nice to just review those. Um, like I've had scenarios in my head and like old with the PUD and PUD and subdivision combined and how would such and such a thing work and I think because we know something like that may well happen in town, we may want to be sure that the DRB has, that we're sending regulations to the DRB that have clarity, because it's, to the best of my knowledge, it's never happened in town before, a PUD and a subdivision.
Well, the subdivision, it's a two-track thing. You're you do the subdivision and you meet all the zoning, or you do a PUD and make the deal where you get increased density to set aside common land. So, but they both have the same uh, overlaying regulations in terms of the PUD does away with some of the setbacks and the lot sizes, but you still have all the, the wetlands, the slopes, the soils, those.
Oh, what I became a little unclear about was, and we could discuss this another time, but if you have a PUD, 50% of the property has to be open land.
Yep.
And that means that you get a density dense, you can cluster your buildings more densely than regular zoning allows for. Plus, you can get another 50% density bonus if 50% or more is affordable.
No, no,
Uh,
they're not. I think it's not. You don't get another 50%. You get to 50%, and some of them need to be affordable. It says so in the regulations. I think it's pretty clear.
Yes,
So
you get a 50% bonus if 50% are or more are affordable.
yeah, let me.
All I'm getting at, without understanding it,
Yeah,
is that it kind of gets down to really, really small lot sizes and really, really dense. Like, so, and that may be fine. I don't, if I figure if I read it and don't fully understand it, that it's worth talking about, and that because this has never happened and nobody's had to confront it,
Mhm.
it might be worth us, since we're doing amendments, being sure that it's clear. I didn't see anything that I thought, oh, this is wrong or bad or anything like that. It was just more like, oh, well, how will this actually work? And that was a little unclear to me.
Mhm.
In the case of a subdivision and a PUD in the village district, it mathematically comes out much better if it's not in the village district, but now with, and then there's also then the issue of we have 1/5 acre lots in the village district, but 1/10 acre is conditional use. So can you do conditional use plus the PUD and have, even smaller lots or all that stuff, just a little bit vague to me.
Mhm.
yeah. I think if I was on the DRB and I would see the the tenth of an acre lot being a conditional use as being a standalone yacht lot. I'm just digging into the PUD language that we have, and this is planning. We have planning designs for subdivisions, and then at the end of that we have the PUDs. And I just want to clarify. Um, it it let's see now. Uh, um, the if a PUD is part of a proposed subdivision, in addition to the standards, so for the major subdivision contained in Article 4, the PUD shall be consistent with the town plan, cluster buildings, not have any adverse. I'm trying to look for the language. Density. Um, and this is in the 7.6 specific standards for PUD. So you could have a PUD within a subdivision, or the PUD
Yeah,
could be the subdivision.
yeah.
But in terms of counting up all the lots and all the common land, um, the DRB may grant a density increase of up to 50% of the allowable number of units in the district where the PUD is, where not less than 50%, not less than 50% of the total number of dwelling units are created for affordable housing. So 50% of the housing created in the PUD need to be affordable. Then we define affordable. And then you do get, and you get that by creating the open space. The minimum requirement for open space shall be 50% of the total acreage of the PUD, including the land where the development is located. So you get the 50% bonus for the open land, and 50% of those bonus of the lots need to be affordable.
Right.
You
I get that. I get what I don't get is how you come up with what the possibilities for lot size are. So we'll take a hypothetical situation. Say you have 10 acres of land, and five of those acres are going to be open land, and you want to have you want to subdivide it and have a PUD. So, and 5 of those acres are open, so that qualifies for the PUD, and more than 50% of them are affordable, or say 50% are going to be affordable. So how many lots does that, and within that, the subdivision regulation, the village regulations are 1/5 of an acre, but could be 1/10 of an acre with conditional use, depending on, or I forget what it is, 30% maximum.
30% of any subdivision can be. So the PUD is a subdivision, so up to 30%.
Together, which I tried to do hypothetically, I was like, wait a minute.
So I get where you're coming from. If
and
yeah,
you know, and 100 lots on the remaining 5 acres. I'm just saying those numbers. 5 acres, or I couldn't quite.
Well, I think the question that I have that I think is part of what you're asking is, with that 50% reduction, if you qualify for that, could you have a 1/15 of an acre lot? Or does the conditional use limit lot sizes to 1/10 of an acre, even if you were granted the 50% bonus?
Right. It's true. I couldn't. Yes, that would certainly be one way to phrase it, because I felt like when I thought about it, it could be interpreted in a lot of different ways. When you think about the PUD outside of the village, like New Hamburgers, it's much easier to parse, because you're talking about 5 acre lots or 2.5 acre lots or whatever. So you're not starting out at that 1/5 of an acre.
Here's what the current language says about density. Except for projects which incorporate affordable housing, which it is sort of funny because it has to a PUD. Oh, I might be in. No, I'm still in planned units development. The overall density of the development shall not exceed the number of dwelling units or structures. So
exceed what?
Yeah.
Where are you looking at?
I was at 7.6.
Okay,
General
I got
standards. But that is that's in the plan. 7.6 is the plan, is specific standards. So the density, the density, to get the density, you have to have 50% of your units have to be affordable.
No. Wait, I guess I have to find it, but
yeah, I think
that wasn't the way I understood it. I thought the whole idea of a PUD was it can be denser.
Yes.
If you and the balance.
Yeah, because it also says under 7.6 number 3, open space land area not allocated to building envelopes shall be permanently preserved as open space. The minimum requirement for open space shall be 50% the total acreage of the PUD.
Right.
There's another distinction here that I think gets a little bit confusing, which is this is talking about PUDs that are also not a subdivision. And in that case, I think if you have a big lot where you're leaving a certain 50% open, within that remaining 50%, you can, my understanding is you can put the houses as dense as you want them to be, as long as the overall density doesn't exceed the allowable density of that district.
That's my understanding.
Yes.
And you cluster those in much smaller lots, but they're not lots. That's the point. They're not being subdivided.
And I didn't even realize until got out of the planning committee. Well, no, I didn't. I guess I started to realize it when the Bill started talking about PUDs. I didn't realize you could do a PUD that was also a subdivision. And probably if I had my own druthers, I'd say you could, but that's
No, somewhere it does say a PUD can be a subdivision. I forget where that is.
yeah. That I just
Yeah.
I haven't personally gotten by the this complicated what ifs.
Yes.
Maybe
Yeah,
we could, I'm really just bringing it up as something that maybe we should discuss sometime because what Jesse said is that's the way I've always related to it. Like at the New Hamburger, we've never had to say look at lot lines or anything like that. We designated uh, cluster areas of clustered housing.
Mhm.
And within that, we could do whatever we want. That it's a little different now, but still pretty close to that.
yeah,
Well, no, I guess it's not different now because that's still part of our PUD plan. That there were designated areas, but within those designated areas, we identified how many buildings we would allow to put in those areas, but we didn't say anything like, you didn't have to, there's no acreage or
Mhm.
anything like that, no relationships between the buildings
Yeah,
that you had to worry about setbacks or
right.
you still have to comply with the setbacks and zoning for that district, but
Right.
so.
But Will, do you have a sense of whether the 10th acre lot could be reduced further if you had that 50% credit?
uh, I
Because that seems like a specific clarification that we might think about making.
we may want to do that. Yeah, because it's a conditional use. In theory, the Development Review Board has that discretion up to 30% of the subdivision, and that would include, I would think, the units in a PUD, because in section 7.4, review process applications for PUD approvals shall be reviewed by the Development Review Board concurrently with subdivision review. So in other words, they review it with the same process for subdivisions and have these specific exemptions that they can apply when
I
it's.
think two things are almost in conflict. That's the problem that I have. Is when I think about it, it might not be, but it is if if you have the availability of conditional use for 1/10 acre. It could be interpreted that you have the ability of conditional use for 1/10 acre up to 30% of the lots plus a 50% density bonus for affordability.
Affordability.
And I think it would be really good to clarify that.
Yeah, yeah.
But then I'm also confused because the whole the PUD application requirements, see if I can find the section. So the basic PUD, but no affordability, no subdivision.
Right.
The PUD, you have 10 acres and you can have, and you're in the village and it's fit, we won't even worry about the 10th acre, and it's 5th acre lots. And you can't have, more than 50 50 lots on that 10 acres, but they have to be within 5 acres because the other 5 acres has to be open.
Those
So-
those are all 10th acre
So
lots.
those are then all 10th acre lots. So, and then you have the 50% bonus on top of that.
No, no, I don't think you get the bonus, that additional bonus. It's one or the other.
Oh. I don't think so, Will.
Okay.
Read it.
Well, I guess if we don't know, we got to figure it out, right?
PUD gets that one bonus, right?
Yeah.
Every PUD, if you have 10 acres and you keep 5 open and you cluster your housing on the other 5 acres, whether they're separate lots or not, you are in effect getting putting 10th acre. If you divide it equally, you're at 10th acre lots. There's 2 problems with that. One is that then you get another, I believe you get another 50% for the affordability, because that's why it's there, is to give an additional density bonus. Plus, I lost my train for a second. You could, it's in conflict with the subdivision regulations, because the subdivision regulations say you can't go over 30% of the 10th acre lots. So, as I thought about it, I was like, well, how's this gonna work? Who's gonna figure this out? The DRB or the planning commission, or is it gonna go to the lawyers or what? And it seems like maybe it's something we should put on our list to try to clarify.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think that makes sense, because if my interpretation is you don't get the second 50% bonus they're not additive, they're parallel, but you do have the 30%.
Why would you have the 50% bonus for affordability at all? Because I think it's in addition.
Okay.
Because otherwise, why would you have it at all? Because you've already got the 50%.
I mean, there's only one 50% bonus,
Yes.
which is if both do preserve 50% of the land and you have 50% affordable housing, then you get a 50% bonus.
But haven't you already gotten a 50% bonus if you're working with 10 acres and you divide it into open land, and so that you're allowed to put as many units or lots on the remaining 5 acres as you would on the total 10, and those would be 10th acre lots. So you've already gotten a 50% bonus. I may not be understanding it right.
Yeah.
But,
No, I do. The example you're making, I can see that it does create, without any bonus, if you take the village density limit of 1/5 of an acre, forget about the conditional use, and you spread that over 10 acres, you get 50 houses, you get 50 lots.
Right.
So if you put them all on 5 acres, you're down to 1/10 of an acre
Right.
lots.
So in effect, it's a 50% bonus.
Yeah.
In effect. And then I think the way it's written, the affordable is on top of that, because otherwise, why would you even put it in there if it wasn't on top of it?
Yeah.
Because you've got the 50% to
And it may be as simple as that bonus maybe applies a lot more directly to a non-subdivision PUD.
Yeah.
And in the case of a subdivision, what's that?
Or outside the village.
Yeah.
Then you're still, you'd still be at a over a 1 acre lot.
Yeah.
As opposed to a 15th acre, which you couldn't fit much on.
Right. But I guess in the case of the subdivision PUD in the village, The question is, can you have now more than 30% below a fifth of an acre?
True. Yep.
And or is the 50% bonus now saying, well, you can now have a 1/7.5 of an acre lot, but you still can't have anything below a tenth of an acre, and only 30% can be below 1/7.5 of an acre.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
kind of the
Right. Well, yeah, here I'm going to go back to the density in 7.6, and it says, except for projects which incorporate affordable housing, the overall, which so these are PUDs that don't involve affordable housing. The overall density shall not exceed the number of dwelling units, structures, or uses which would otherwise be permitted in the um, Development Review Board's judgment if the land were subdivided in conformity with the regulations. However, you can move the lots around. So you don't get a density bonus for having the open land. You get the flexibility to move the lots and the lot sizes in a to make them fit better on that parcel. But the total number of units is the same as if it was a square division of the land. So one PUD is you have on a 10-acre parcel with 1 acre zoning, you have to have 10 1-acre squares, or to meet the zoning requirements. So you have 10 buildings, or you can move all those 10 buildings into one little corner with different setbacks, flexible setbacks, and flexible lot sizes. And if you have the affordable, if 50% of those are affordable, then you can increase your number of dwellings density by 50%. So there, the first flavor of PUDs is lot size flexibility, keeping the density the same. And it reads 7.6 specific standards. And
Right.
yeah, and that's for except for projects with incorporate affordable housing. Then you add affordable housing, then you get the 50% bonus of the number of density, the number of units allowed. Does that?
You're right, Will, in looking at the word density, but in looking at the lot size, that's the part my understanding of the way it reads and what you just said was and I get the flexibility in the location of the lots, but if it's 10 acres, 5 has to be open, 5 can be uh, flexibly located,
Mhm.
but you could then fit 50 houses on that 5 acres, so the lot sizes could be as small as, in the case of also being a subdivision, excuse me, you could fit, the lot sizes would be a tenth of an acre. And then you get, on top of that, you could get a density bonus, which would change that, and there's still the 30% thing that is kind of in conflict.
Yeah, I guess you do want to separate density, which is the number of allowable lots that the zone allows. So you do a straight subdivision, no PUD, you get squares or zoning, size lot sizes that meet the district setbacks and lot size configurations. That's a subdivision with no PUD. You do a PUD, you can change the lot sizes, but
Right,
the number of houses stays the same.
right, so yeah, you're right, it's better, it's the lot sizes that becomes the issue. So you're right, you don't get a density bonus.
Yes, you get flexibility.
You get flexibility in your lot size, so the question becomes how that flexibility in a PUD with lot sizes in a subdivision relates to the subdivision regulations. And
Right. Yeah. Well, if you do a straight subdivision, you're stuck with the setbacks and configurations in the district. If you do a PUD, you have that, you can move stuff around on the playing board. But you can't increase the otherwise density. But because the subdivision allows for 30% small lots, call them tenth of an acre, that would be the density allowed in the district, which in the village would be 30% of those lots could be a tenth of an acre. So you're right, it's confusing, and we want to, if there's something that we can add that makes that a little clearer, it would be worth adding.
Yeah, I think it's confusing, and I
Yep.
still, there's a contradiction between the two things. The
Yep.
subdivision and the regulations of the subdivision and the flexibility of the PUD there's a bit of a contradiction. And which one would get hierarchy? Does a PUD then obviate, if you go for a PUD and a subdivision, does it obviate the 30%? Does it,
Well,
you know, I think those are all questions that could come up, that if we can clarify them and answer them first, it would make the DRB so easier.
exactly, because some of that is at the discretion of the DRB, and our job is to provide clarity for the DRB to operate with. So a task, we should all read over both the subdivision and the PUDs and try to highlight those conflicts. That's a nice little task for the holidays, for the Thanksgiving dinner table. See if you can bring that up at the dinner table for Thanksgiving.
Well, I was like, oh, there's going to be some judgments about it, that we'll talk about and try to figure out.
Yep, that sounds good. Thanks for bringing that up, because yeah, it's sort of vague, but if you work through the whole sequence, there are some unresolved issues that could be made clear. I think that's a good point. Any other things to bring up? Okay. Well, thanks for showing up on a rainy night down at the town office. And I'll send out the minutes at some point, and David, I'll send you some of that literature to read. Heavy reading. Okay. A motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
And a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Okay.
Hey,
See ya.
Travis.
Okay. Thank you.